As October 2025 draws to a close, the United States finds itself in the midst of a deepening crisis. The federal government remains partially shut down, with the effects rippling across the nation. Offices that once buzzed with activity now stand silent, and the iconic Capitol building glows against an unusually quiet Washington evening. The shutdown, which began at the start of the month, has now stretched into its fourth week, with no clear end in sight. The days have turned into weeks, and the shutdown has become the longest in recent memory. Each passing day brings new uncertainty for federal workers, contractors, and millions of Americans who rely on government services. News tickers across the country flash updates as the standoff drags on, and the sense of urgency grows. The gears of Washington have ground to a halt, paralyzed by a bitter and seemingly intractable disagreement over healthcare policy. Congressional chambers, once filled with debate and negotiation, now echo with emptiness. Frustrated lawmakers exit the Capitol, unable to bridge the widening divide. At the heart of the impasse is Congress's failure to pass the essential spending legislation required to fund government operations for the new fiscal year. The legislative process has stalled, leaving critical documents unsigned and vital programs in limbo. The consequences are felt not just in Washington, but in communities across the country. The central point of contention is the fate of health insurance subsidies that were originally expanded under the American Rescue Plan during the COVID-19 pandemic. These enhanced subsidies have helped millions of Americans afford coverage, especially as healthcare costs have continued to rise. Now, with the subsidies set to expire, families, healthcare providers, and insurers are left in a state of anxious uncertainty, unsure of what the future holds. On one side of the debate, Democratic leaders have drawn a firm line in the sand. They refuse to support any short-term spending bills unless those bills include a provision to extend the enhanced healthcare subsidies. For them, protecting access to affordable healthcare is a non-negotiable priority, and they argue that letting the subsidies expire would be a devastating blow to millions of Americans still struggling to recover from the pandemic's economic fallout. On the other side, a significant faction of Republicans insists that these temporary, pandemic-era measures must be allowed to sunset as originally intended. They argue that the emergency is past, and that continuing the subsidies would only add to the federal deficit and prolong government overreach. For them, fiscal responsibility and a return to pre-pandemic norms are paramount. With both sides entrenched, the shutdown stalemate continues, leaving the nation waiting for a breakthrough that remains elusive. To truly grasp the current political and economic deadlock over health insurance in America, it's essential to first understand the Affordable Care Act's premium tax credits. These credits, often called subsidies, are the backbone of making health insurance more affordable for millions of Americans. Without them, many families would simply be unable to pay for coverage, and the entire system would look very different. The story of these subsidies is not just about numbers and policies. It's about real people, their health, and their financial security. The Affordable Care Act, or ACA, was signed into law in 2010 by President Barack Obama. It marked a historic shift in American healthcare, aiming to expand coverage to millions who were previously uninsured. The law did this in two main ways: by expanding Medicaid for low-income Americans, and by creating private insurance marketplaces where people could shop for plans, often with the help of government subsidies. These marketplaces, sometimes called exchanges, became the central hub for Americans seeking affordable health insurance outside of their jobs. Originally, the ACA's subsidies were designed for people earning between 100% and 400% of the federal poverty level. This meant that if your income was too high for Medicaid but not high enough to comfortably afford private insurance, you could get help paying your premiums. However, even with these subsidies, many middle-income families still found themselves struggling. Premiums and out-of-pocket costs kept rising, and for some, the assistance just wasn't enough to make coverage truly affordable. This left a gap. Millions of Americans earned too much to qualify for help but not enough to easily pay for insurance. In 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act brought a major, though temporary, change. Recognizing the financial strain caused by the pandemic, Congress decided to enhance the ACA's subsidies. The new law increased the amount of assistance people could get and, crucially, removed the upper income cap. For the first time, even higher-earning families could qualify for help if their insurance premiums were too expensive relative to their income. This expansion was a lifeline for many, making health insurance more affordable and accessible than ever before. Under these expanded rules, no one had to pay more than 8.5% of their household income on health insurance premiums, regardless of how much they earned. This was a dramatic shift from the old system, where some families faced premiums that ate up a much larger share of their income. For many, this meant hundreds or even thousands of dollars in savings each year, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing health coverage is within reach. However, these expanded subsidies were never meant to last forever. They are set to expire at the end of 2025, unless Congress acts to extend them. As that deadline approaches, anxiety is growing among families who have come to depend on this extra help. The prospect of losing these subsidies means facing much higher premiums, and for some, the very real possibility of losing coverage altogether. Today, millions of Americans rely on these enhanced credits to keep their insurance affordable. The stakes are high, not just for individual families, but for the entire healthcare system. If the subsidies expire, experts warn that many could drop coverage, leading to higher rates of uninsurance and more strain on hospitals and clinics that serve the uninsured. The insurance market itself has come to depend on this government support. Insurers, healthcare providers, and policymakers are all watching closely, knowing that the future of affordable coverage and the health of millions hangs in the balance. For Democrats, extending the expanded subsidies is a moral and economic necessity. They argue that letting them expire would cause severe hardship for millions, especially amid economic uncertainty. The expanded subsidies have brought the uninsured rate to a record low, making insurance affordable for many who were previously priced out. Reversing this progress, they say, would be reckless and disproportionately harm vulnerable Americans. Republicans see the debate as a matter of fiscal discipline and government restraint. They argue the expanded subsidies were a temporary pandemic measure that should end now that the crisis is over. Making them permanent, they say, would expand entitlements without addressing long-term costs. With a $30 billion annual price tag, fiscal conservatives call the subsidies unsustainable. They believe tough choices are needed to control federal spending, starting with letting temporary programs expire. Many in the GOP also remain philosophically opposed to the Affordable Care Act itself. Both parties are missing the bigger picture and fueling dysfunction. The real issue isn't just subsidies, it's the sky-high cost of health insurance itself. Democrats demand more funding without reform, while Republicans want cuts without solutions. Neither side addresses the regulations and market distortions that make insurance unaffordable in the first place. The focus on subsidies distracts from the real crisis, the astronomical cost of health insurance. ACA plans are so expensive that most enrollees can't afford them without government help. This is largely due to regulations requiring comprehensive one-size-fits-all plans. While well-intentioned, these rules have driven up premiums dramatically. It's as if every car had to be a luxury SUV, great for some, but unaffordable for many. To truly understand just how far the U.S. healthcare system has drifted from its intended path, it's helpful to look at a country that took a different approach, Switzerland. While both nations are wealthy, industrialized, and value personal freedom, their healthcare systems have evolved in dramatically different ways. Switzerland's model is often overlooked in American debates, but it offers a fascinating comparison that challenges many assumptions about what's possible in a market-based system. Switzerland's market-based system, which actually shares some design features with the Affordable Care Act, manages to achieve universal coverage for all its citizens. But unlike the US, it does so without the crushing costs that burden American families. In Switzerland, everyone is required to buy insurance, but the government tightly regulates what insurers can charge and what must be covered. This balance of competition and regulation keeps prices in check and ensures that no one is left out. By contrast, in the United States, premiums for ACA plans can easily reach $1,000 to $1,500 a month for a standard family plan, and that's before you even factor in high deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses. For many middle-class Americans, these costs are simply unaffordable, forcing tough choices between healthcare and other essentials. Even with insurance, many Americans worry about surprise bills and whether they can afford to get sick. To make these sky-high prices manageable, the U.S. government has to step in with massive subsidies. billions of taxpayer dollars each year. Without this financial support, the private insurance market would simply collapse, leaving millions uninsured. Yet, even with these subsidies, millions still struggle to afford coverage, and the system remains one of the most expensive in the world. In Switzerland, things look very different. Insurance is far more affordable, and the government's role is to set the rules and make sure everyone plays fair, not to pour in endless subsidies. The result is a system where people can access care without fear of financial ruin, and where the cost of coverage doesn't threaten to overwhelm household budgets. This stark contrast highlights a crucial point. It's not just about who pays for healthcare, but about how the system is designed. In America, a complex web of regulations, opaque pricing, and administrative red tape has driven up costs for everyone, patients, providers, and taxpayers alike. Meanwhile, Switzerland's simpler, more transparent rules keep costs down and care accessible. Ultimately, the U.S. healthcare debate often focuses on who should foot the bill, government, employers, or individuals, rather than asking the deeper question, why does it cost so much in the first place? By looking at Switzerland, we see that a different approach is possible, one that delivers universal coverage, controls costs, and avoids the endless cycle of blame and crisis that defines the American system. There's a better way, a compromise that addresses the crisis and sets the stage for reform. I propose a short-term extension of the subsidies, but only for current enrollees, in exchange for permanent reforms to lower insurance costs. This would protect families from sudden price hikes, while tackling the root causes of high premiums. Republicans would show they care about those relying on subsidies, and Democrats would have a path to real reform. Most importantly, it would end the shutdown and move the debate forward. This shutdown isn't just political theater, it affects every American's health and finances. The outcome will determine whether families can afford care, small businesses can offer insurance, and whether healthcare costs keep rising. For 24 million ACA enrollees, the stakes are immediate. Losing subsidies threatens their access to care and financial stability. But high insurance costs affect everyone, from workers with smaller raises to those paying full price. Taxpayers ultimately bear the burden for billions in subsidies. The debate is about the future of American healthcare, and everyone has a stake in the outcome.